I'm Brian Bonilla. I'm a senior agency reporter with Ad Age. And you know these two from helping run this fine event. So today's topic, we're going to focus on why agency brands matter, which I think is a very prevalent topic in today's industry. In your guys' opinion, do they matter like as much as they used to, right? Because we're seeing a lot of consolidation. We're seeing a lot of, holdcos maybe taking away the focus from individual agency brands. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think they matter more than they mattered before for just that reason. And we talked about this earlier in the week, but a few years ago, I stumbled across this treasure trove where a graduate student who was studying creative agencies gathered 740 agency positionings in a spreadsheet. And I think they probably did that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but I went back into it in preparation for this. And it was interesting to see how many of those agencies aren't anymore. Either because they closed or they were collapsed underneath something else. And so I think in a moment where there is a lot of consolidation and there's a lack of differentiation, the agencies that stand for something really clear will be disproportionately rewarded.
Do you have anything to add, Tomas?
All I would say is that I think when you look at the market, I think over the last 10, 20 years, I think a lot of agencies try to expand, do more. I think we're in a place where I think everyone's trying to do a little bit of everything. As holding companies, individual agencies, I think in that landscape, when you try to do everything, no one's really good at anything anymore. And I think to your point on differentiation, and if you're a client, who do I pick that I want to work with? You probably want the best in a specific capability, in a specific field. And I think that comes with an agency brand that is recognizable and famous for that specific skill. So yes, I think they absolutely matter.
And you guys are part of two very kind of different agencies. Martin, a bit smaller than DDB, I would say, but the brand is pretty big in the industry. How do you keep the brand focus alive within the agency culture, and how do you make sure that trickles down to junior staff that may be coming into the industry, they don't really know about certain legacies of certain agencies? And I would love for you to hear your thoughts on that.
Happy to start. So I think I've been half joking, that I think over the last few months, my job has been the agency archaeologist. And I think partly because it's a 70-year-old agency, DDB, but partly because I think we just tend to forget where we come from too quickly. Like there's next thing, like next shiny thing, and we forget the history that we have, and I think what defines the culture of the place. So to me, it's like, for me, it's very much about, I think, as a good brand manager, like uncovering and defining the brand truth of your place, and then but then importantly, making it relevant every single day through the work that you do. So it's not just about building back, like heritage and quotes and all the VW ads and AVs ads and like all the work that I think we all love and kind of like, as people that work in the industry. But it is about making it relevant every single day. So that when you think about what marketing should be going, where creativity is going, that we have that lens on the power of emotion and simplicity and how you really bring strong brands, but you are quite open and I think optimistic about where the future is going.
Elizabeth?
Yeah. I mean, Marcus talked earlier this morning about the power of culture and the way that culture can kind of move our norms. I think for us, our agency positioning is that we fight invisibility, and that's rooted first and foremost in that stat that 84% of ads are never seen. But it's also a truth for our people and for the cultural goods that we create. And so we have tried to create a culture where fighting invisibility becomes the norm. And it's funny, at our quarterly staff meeting last week, we've got some folks here who just sat through this. We actually took time to go all the way back through with everyone. Here's what this means, and here's why we do it. Because, for us, those words like we fight invisibility, they live on the wall. They're in the job offers. Like when we extend an offer to someone, it says, "Want to fight?" It lives on the swag. But in the same way that language creates culture, practices embody culture and stories multiply culture. And so for us, some of it is having this storytelling culture where we're continually going back to the mission and helping people personalize it. What does it mean to fight invisibility as a strategist, as a producer, as a recruiter, as a business affairs person? And I think for us, we try to kind of take an inside out approach and then use that storytelling culture to kind of keep it front of mind for people.
And, I've spoken to agencies who've told me that some of their clients don't even know that they're the specific agency on their work, right? They know the larger holdco, but they don't know the agency that's touching their work, every day. And that's I found that surprising, but
Yeah.
I could see how that's possible. What are examples of what you've seen a client actually maybe a piece of business you won because of your agency brand, or it's getting you the foot in the door? Do you have any examples of that?
I actually feel like we do get a lot of phone calls in new business where we will have clients who say, we came to you because of what you stand for. Whether it's shared values or shared conviction about how brands grow. We actually get a fair number of phone calls where, we're doing the kind of quick, like, oh, how did you hear about us? Like, they will talk about our mission. Shortly after the positioning was launched, I think one of the first pitches it was DoorDash. And our client, Kofi, at the time said that in that pitch, we were the only agency that had a philosophy that ran all the way through. Like, it wasn't just a philosophy you saw in the creds meeting and you didn't hear about it again. It informed the strategic process, the creative product, and the people who are on the business. And so I don't know that every CMO is looking for that, but the ones who do, I think are really paying attention, because the thought is that if we are consistently building our own brand, then we'll be better at building theirs.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very good example. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the John Lewis work by Adam and Eve out from the UK. I mean, that's the definition of kind of holiday emotional advertising. I think there was a very public kind of uncoupling of that partnership last year, and I think we just announced that we've signed Amazon across Europe as a client there. That's a direct result of, I think, a very clear signature and commitment to emotionally driven storytelling that I think defines the agency, and I think what we're known for. But I think to your point, it's very much part of, I think, how everyone has to operate for it to come true. It can't just be, sales material, like proposition for clients. It has to be who you are.
And obviously DDB, large network. You've recently integrated DDB New York with Adam and Eve, and you mentioned in the past that you worked with VML as well, and they've merged, historically in the past. So how do you think about an agency brand when you have those mergers going on, and you also have agencies like Alma within your network, and Adam and Eve, right, and DDB? So how do you think about all those brands at once?
I'm just get fired up here for a second. I mean, I think we've spoken about this. I don't think any of us, that are in the room, I'm not sure how about you, but like when you wake up in the morning, I'm not sure that you want to, oh my God, I really want to make my career at Omnicom, or I just, if only I could work at WPP, I could do the best work of my career. I think people want a place with an identity that stands for something, that will support them, that will create an environment that surround them with talent that allows them to do the best work of their career. And what's important for us at DDB is, I think, to have a kind of common philosophy that we all believe in about how brands grow. What does it mean to be modern, responsible brand manager? I think a lot of that's informed by our colleague Les Binet, and I think the work that we do around the world. And for us, I think it's a notion of, I think, we're giving clients emotional advantage in the work that they do, and then supporting it by a very modern approach to creativity. That's a philosophy. It's not necessarily a line, it's what we agree on. But then individual agencies that we have, whether that's offices or brands like Alma or Adam and Eve or Africa or Mudra around the world, I think it's on the CEO and the leadership team to take that philosophy and apply it to the market in which they operate, because the marketing landscape differs, and I think the client mix differs as well. I think there has to be flexibility. What I've seen in other places, you mentioned my previous role, and I think we've seen that in Publicis and WPP as well. In spirit of, I think, simplifying the story for our clients, you sometimes create entities that I think attempt to do everything. And I think because of that, as an individual, you end up feeling like a resource that is part of a solution, as opposed to someone that can develop the best work of their careers. And I think ultimately, what last thing I'll say is, ultimately, I think all of this is about the quality of the work. And I think the smart client will see that.
Elizabeth, did you want to?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was digging into the agency positionings for fun, I also looked at the holding company positionings, because increasingly, agencies are in some instances kind of getting subjugated under the holding company brand. And unsurprisingly, they were less kind of snappy positioning statements and more, probably like a Wall Street disclosure, like 30 to 300 words. That was usually a paragraph. I did think to myself that if I went to ChatGPT and was like, write me a holding company positioning statement that includes the words technology, information, transformation, creativity, and growth.
Data.
And data, they all are kind of like pushing peas around the plate. So I don't mean that as any shade, but I really thought about it and I was like, they are an entity that is a conglomeration. And we've had a lot of conversation today about specificity and the power of specificity in storytelling and communication. And I think it is a really good example that because there's so many people that statement has to serve, that they seem to mean less and less. And so I agree with you. I think if you look at where talent wants to work, the Brand Center does an annual survey where they survey both students and alumni, and they say, what are the agencies and companies you want to work for? And I went through the list, and every single one of them had a positioning that I could name without looking at it. Every single one of them had a clear point of view, a clear identity, and a clear sense of the mission that you would be joining. And I agree, like this is a talent business. As much as every agency says they have like a black box methodology that no one ever has thought of, the truth is like we're all cooking with the same 5 or 6 ingredients. And I think the way that you arrange them, the flying formation, the belief that animates them is the difference, and the agency with the best talent tends to win.
And I think honestly to your first question, like why agency brands matter, now we're rolling. Is that I think like ultimately it is absolutely about the talent, right? And I think we as an industry need these brands that people feel like they can do the best work of their careers. I think as an industry we're definitely being slapped around. I think through transformation and there's a better way of doing it. Maybe like AI can do all of our creative work. But at the end of the day, I think to attract the best talent that's coming out of universities right now, that wants to have a long-term career in the field, you need places that feel like, oh my God, I really feel like I can have a really fulfilling career here. So I think we all need to, I think people in that room, we should really hold hands together and kind of create those places that feel like this is really worthwhile. So I think they do matter.
And do you pay attention to other agencies that you feel like are doing branding well? Like, what are you seeing in terms of the trend of how agencies are positioning themselves differently than maybe in the past?
I think one thing that is interesting, this is probably more a signal than a shift, but I feel like most of the history of the industry, like the agencies were named after, let's be honest, men. And so even a lot of the best agencies today, and frankly, both of our agencies were named after a man who was the founder. And I imagine the thinking at the time was like, this is who you're betting on. It's this person's reputation, it's this person's leadership, like that served a purpose. And certainly there are still examples of that, Cartwright and Collins and people who are founding agencies, Mo threw a supermarket on there, but still we know Mo is who you're betting on. I think more of the independent agencies that are coming forward today, it's a philosophy or a personality. The theory is on the front door, right? So it's anomaly or it's mischief, it's translation, or it's opinionated, it's gut, like what you're getting. And it says something to me that, in theory, most entrepreneurialism is built to fill a gap in the market somewhere. And it seems like this crop, by and large, is saying what we stand for, how we build brands, like that will be our signature and that will be the lead. And I think that shift is telling.
I think it's just a macro point. I think there's just too much complexity in the marketplace. And I think navigating that complexity is really hard, where there's capability overlap between agencies. And I think having a clear point of view, whether that's in your name or how you position yourself, I think it's just essential.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're about that time limit. I don't see the time limit.
So it's because we're sitting. We can't see the
1 minute and 10 seconds.
Right.
Ooh, 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Well, is there anything that you wanted to, leave the audience with in terms of, the progression of agency brands, how you're thinking about it, or how they just can get more involved?
I would just say, I think for this audience in particular, this is a room of strategists, right? So we are the strategic architects of the brands that we work on. You always have an invitation to take your agency's philosophy and process and apply it to your own agency, if you're on the agency side. I know we have folks here who are in the brand side as well. That is what we did. And ironically, our agency strategy process now is different than it was when I first got hired in 2003, but we did the same thing in the early aughts. We took our strategic process and we applied it to our brand, and we treated ourselves like a client. And the truth is that anybody can do that. And I think it's important work because it signals, for the strategy nerds who have read Eating the Big Fish, they talk about lighthouse branding, and a lighthouse, it flashes consistently in a direction until the world navigates around it. And I think the best brands, we would tell any brand that we were working on building, we would say, okay, you need to stand for something and you need to signal that thing consistently. And if you do that, then the right people will come towards you and the wrong people will go away. And I think, a lot of agencies, because of the market dynamics, we're a little bit like Sally Field, where we just want everyone to like us. And so, like a lot of the brands we work on, we're afraid to say anything that would push somebody away. But actually, a good positioning should signal to the market, this is who we're for, and this is who we're not for. And I think that's true for prospective clients and new business. I think it's true for talent. I think it's true for partners. And so I would say for this room in particular, like, take your process, ask your biz dev team, your agency leaders, like, what does it look like when we apply this to ourselves? Because we should all be making ourselves our own best case study.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me for this talk, and I know Tomas, you're gonna.
Nice. I'll take everyone to the break. Thank you so much.